Snow had a way of making even the loudest things quiet. The storm came in bands across the lonely miles of the Wolfswood, ghostly sheets advancing and thinning and advancing again, so that the riders who found the road to Winterfell seemed to be made of the same pale grit as the night. The watchmen on the outer wall saw their lanterns first, pinpricks swaying, laboring through the swirling white. A horn blew once. The gate, with its black bands of iron, groaned open like an old man rising from a bench, and the strangers came limping into the gatehouse with the clatter of exhausted horses and the breath of their mounts pluming like spirits. Eddard Stark was already descending the stair from the keep, cloak thrown over nightclothes, boots pulled in haste and unlaced beneath the hem. The lantern he carried made an unsteady basin of warmth around him as he moved across the yard. The snow fell thick and slow and straight, seeming to reduce the whole of Winterfell to a small stage lit by his flame. He thought of the men asleep in their pallets, of Catelyn stirring and reaching toward his warmth and finding only the impression of his body in the furs, of the children breathing in their separate rooms, and of the persistent murmur of the hot springs, that old subterranean rumbling that made the castle a place apart from other northern seats, a hearth place instead of a keep of stones. The men at the gate were ragged. One clutched a bundle to his chest beneath a sodden cloak. He had the look of the sea about him, salt etched into his beard like frost, hands roped with scars and callus. His feet left wet prints on the stone. When he spoke, the words came hesitantly, pieced together from several tongues, but they were serviceable, and their meaning was clear enough. "For the Lord," he said, and held the bundle out toward the torch. The child did not cry. It was swaddled in threadbare shawls of a southern weave, some dyed with a faint pink that might once have been fine. The little face was half hidden, the lashes beaded with melted snow, the lips faintly blue, but the eyes were open and watching. The eyes were the thing a man remembered, unnatural in a northern night, like bruised petals, like the inside of an amethyst. Eddard had never seen eyes like that except where the pages of old books painted Valyria and its ruin. "Inside," he said. He did not ask the man his name or his errand in the yard. There were questions, a storm of them, hissing and restless like sleet blown across the yard, but the child's color was wrong. They went through the ringing corridor and out into a pocket of steam where the baths kept the stone damp and warm. It was a strange winter's transition, from knives of air to an embrace of exhalations. They set the child down on a bench near one of the lesser pools. A serving woman had been roused from her pallet and brought clean wool and a basin with hot water. The salt man hovered awkwardly, hat crushed between twisting hands. "She will need milk," the woman said, brisk, practical, already loosening the wrappings. "Not goat. Goat is too thin. Marta's girl has just had a son. She will share." "Nay," the man said in the stumbling accent. "No name, no telling. No." He groped for words and found one. "King." Eddard watched him. The winter in his bones, which never thawed fully even in summer, turned itself in him like something restless in a cave. "Tell me," Eddard said. "Whatever you have, give it now." The man licked his lips. He had been brave to come, but now, with the safety of walls around him and a lord's eyes on him, the story must be told, and the telling pinned it to a single version that could no longer change in the mouth and the mind as stories changed when held alone. He cast a quick look at the child, a furtive, frightened wonder there. Then he fixed his eyes on the pooling water. "A man died," the salt man said. "A prince. He said he was. He said many things. I do not know the truth of it. He boasted overmuch, as men do with wine in them and want in their bellies. In Tyrosh it was a brawl. A boast becomes a dare becomes knives. He shouted of crowns and a sword of his father's. He died quick, but he shouted much. Those who were with him ran. One woman took the babe. Her hands shook. She had no coin left. She sold the last piece of gold to buy a place on my ship. Then she died of the yellow fever before we made White Harbor. And this child." Eddard's voice was steady. "The woman said who she was? She said a name," the man said. He mangled it a little, made it a soft foreign thing. "Daenerys." She said it as if it were a prayer or a charm that would bring the good wind. She pressed it into the cloth. "Look." He fumbled in his pocket and pulled out a shred of dragon-black silk, torn and greasy with handling, along the edge of which had been stitched a three-headed beast in silver thread, very small and now spotted and fraying. The work was too fine for a common seamstress. The thing must have been part of something grand in its beginning. A swaddling cloth of a sort might be made from anything when one had nothing. Eddard did not reach for it. "Why come to me?" he asked. The woman said. He shrugged, uncomfortable. "The names mean little to me." She said the wolves were honorable if they remembered. "A man in the harbor said you were such a wolf." "I am afraid of kings, my lord." "A man goes where his fear pushes him, and somehow it walked me through your gate." Honey was dribbled into warm milk and coaxed between the baby's lips. The color in the child's mouth deepened. Her eyes closed, opened again, considered the lights and the ceiling of moisture in a way that did not seem newborn. She did not wail. The quiet was unsettling. The serving woman looked at Eddard as if to say, "This is an odd one, my lord, but a baby is a baby." Eddard had questions that would not settle, a swirl of them, each answering and making a new one, the way Snowf. Lakes aggregate in the air. A prince died in Tyrosh and a woman died on a ship. It could be any man's story, a scuffle, a fever, and it could also be the story that would bring a king's wrath down on the roof of his home. He could see Robert's mouth twist at the idea of a dragon babe tucked into the corners of the north. The salt man swallowed the last of his words. "I did not kill him," he added softly, as if that were the most dangerous misunderstanding. "I do not kill princes. I am a poor man. I only carry what the sea will bear for my cut of it, and I carried this." "You carried a storm into my hall." Eddard's own voice surprised him, not for its softness but for its weight. "You brought a charge I cannot give to the wind." He thought of John, asleep 2 corridors away, and of how the shape of one mercy had bent his life into a particular form that could not be laid straight again. Mercy had edges. The baby made a sound like a bubble breaking in warm water. The serving woman smiled despite herself. She had been a midwife often enough to know that small sounds cut through the fogs that beset lords. "Go up," Eddard said to her. "Wake Marta gently. Ask for a place on the breast for this child. Tell her I will send her a cask of barley for her trouble, and my thanks, which she will find worth more than the barley. And say to no one who has no right to hear it what you carry in your arms tonight. Bring the babe to the solar when she has fed. I will see her there." The woman nodded and swept away with the small bundle in the well-practiced cradle of her arms. The salt man's hands wanted occupation. He gripped his hat again and again. "I ask only the promise for my neck," he said. "I ask only that if a man comes saying there was a ship and a child, your men will not point their hands at me. I wish to go back to the sea, my lord, where I belong, and forget the way to your gate." Eddard weighed him with the simple fairness that was a habit and a rule with him. It was the way he put the pieces of truth and use on 2 sides of a scale. "I cannot give you a promise if I do not know your name," he said. The man hesitated. "Tal Oris," he said. "A liar's name, perhaps." "An honest enough lie," Eddard said. "I will not hunt you, Tal Oris. Go to your ship quietly at dawn. Say nothing to anyone. The road you took to get here does not exist for you after this night." Tal Oris closed his eyes for a moment and opened them lighter. "My thanks." He bowed awkwardly, stumbled a little in the damp, and was gone. When Eddard was alone in the ringing warmth, the bathhouse seemed a place of strange omens. The pipes that brought the water through the stone sighed and muttered. The pool's stubborn warmth had made possible the life of this castle for longer than anyone could measure. There was always warmth underground in Winterfell. He thought of the wild stories old Nan told, that the hot water was the breath of a buried earth dragon, sodden with sleep, the coils of its body the loopings of the stone. It was foolishness, and he found it comforting. He put his hand out and let the steam gather on his skin. Then he extinguished the lantern and went into the corridors like any other shadow. Caitlin sat upright in bed when he entered, furs clutched around her shoulders. Her hair was unbound, dark with sleep. She had not lit a candle. She had been listening to the night as if it were trying to say something to her. "What is it?" she asked. No chiding there, only wary care. "You do not wear a face to make me easy." "A child," he said. A simpler word would not do. "Our steward has a complaint?" "A child," he repeated. "From across the sea." She made the sign she made when she feared for their children. A little unconscious motion of finger to ring finger. A habit from her girlhood with the Seven's images still near at hand. "What is that to do with us, Ned?" he told her, plain and careful. He kept to what had been said and not the thousand things it suggested. The name hung in the air and did not vanish. He did not say Robert's name at all. It did not need saying. When he had finished, she turned her face away at once, as if she had been struck by a gust not to be seen. He waited. She was a strong, practical woman. He had never met a better companion to steadiness. But he saw the reflexive calculus begin in her, and it pained him to watch it, because he knew where it began and where it ended. Their children's little lives weighed against a larger thing, honor and mercy and the making of the world. When she turned back, her eyes were wet, and she wiped them with the heel of her hand angrily. "I am tired of sheltering storms, Ned," she said, voice more quiet than the rattle of the pipes. "How many can one roof bear and not rot? You brought one in once, and I forgave you that. I made peace with the consequence. But this, if a whisper of this reaches King's Landing, the king will not care that you did not beget her yourself. His wrath will not calculate so finely. Will you put our children in the way of it? Will you put our home in the mouth of the lion?" He had rehearsed answers to himself in the walk between places, and now those answers felt like little plates of metal that would not cover the wound. He went closer and knelt so she could see his face. "I do not know what I will do that will avoid danger for all of them," he said. "But I know a baby cannot be left in the snow because the day may come when a king hears of her. If mercy has cost me before, I would pay it again. We will be careful. We will be quiet. We will call her by a different name. We will teach those who must know not to let their tongues wag. We will hide her where we hide all the other things we cannot bear to lose. Here, among what we love." Catelyn's hands tightened around the furs until the knuckles blanched. Then she loosened them, and with a little weary sound, she nodded. "I will not put flint to your kindness," she said. "I have. I married it. I must live with its light." She drew breath. "We will be careful, then. She will not be Daenerys here. Call her something simple. You are better than I at naming. I can only think of names I have already given to others." He thought, and one of the old names rose out of a winter of stories like a fish from under a skin of ice. "Nera," he said. "It sits inside the truth but does not show it. Nera can come in out of the snow." "She cannot stay where I kneel," Catelyn said. He knew she meant the little square room where she kept her images of the Seven, the southern shrine she had made for herself in this northern place as a compromise between her girlhood faith and her winter life. "But she can eat at my table. I can be fair. I can be kind. Do not ask for more. I am not made for saints' work. I will not ask for more." He took her hand, and when she sighed and let him hold it, he knew the worst of the decision had been made. They lay down again at last, though neither slept for long, their breaths turning the furs warmer than the springs could ever make them. Morning discovered Winterfell again, shrugging the night off its shoulders. Servants moved along their known paths, and the smells of bread and smoke returned with their usual assurance. In an alcove off the solar where one could hear the ravens fussing 2 rooms away, Eddard met the baby again. She had fed and slept and now watched him with that unnerving, unfollowing gaze of the very small. Her hair, what there was of it, was so fair as to be almost transparent. Maester Luwin, who had arrived so promptly and silently that Eddard thought perhaps he had been alert in his tower all night as well, adjusted the shawls around her with neat hands. "It is not unheard of," Luwin said in his even way, "for us to have wards and fosterlings from other places. Traders lose wives along the road every season. Sailors bring back children they did not know how to leave on a quay, and widowers cannot always keep what the voyage gives them. We could say the child is such a one." We would be kinder than the road. We will never say more than that to anyone who doesn't need to know. You recognize her, Eddard said. I recognize the shape of a story, Luwin replied. He did not pretend to ignorance. The man had read too much and seen too much of men to do that clumsiness. If we hide a stone in a bread loaf from a hungry man, we should not be surprised when he cracks a tooth. If we hide a child with such hair, we must be sure of our cupboard. There are those in the yard who will know their histories from old talk and old songs. They will talk under their breath at first, and then louder when ale sheds their caution. But no word will leave this place unless some hand throws it into the sky. We will tie hands. They named her Nera in the hall at noon when the bread was cut and beer poured. It slid into the table's talk with little notice, a stray fact among many. Nera, Eddard said mildly when a servant asked whose bowl should accompany Rob's to the kind nurse's palate. The new girl. See, she gets some broth. She is not used to our food. And to Janie, the kitchen girl, who always pointed too eagerly at any remark. No gossip. We have enough of our own. The servants took their cues from the tone, as they always did. The new girl became as ordinary at Winterfell as any child can be who does not belong. She slept at first in Marta's loft, close to warm flesh and milk and the soft murmur of old women's comfort. Then, when she took bread and thick porridge and lived under her own breath, she was moved into a room with other small girls whose fathers were far afield killing boars or cutting timber. She grew there like a plant set into a pot in a different climate. Slowly at first, leaves curling with cold, then steady, adjusting to the light and the way the water came. Her hair came in like frost at dawn. When she walked the yard at 2, then 3, then for winters, people turned to look at the pale fall of it, and the eyes like porcelain with paint fired onto it. In the north, rarity is noticed, but there were Westermen with flax hair and travelers' children with eyes like colored glass. She was a curiosity, not a scandal. The small folk called her the far girl, as if that explained the difference. And she ran with Arya, and when Sansa allowed it, with Sansa too, and her hand, small and precise, learned to thread a needle in the women's room and to hold a wooden sword properly in the yard because Jon taught her by showing how he corrected his own hands. If there was a hunger in her that looked different, it was only the sort of hunger anyone might have and blame on a thin summer. She wanted heat. She followed the cooks as they slid great loaves near and away from the oven mouth, and she took strange joy in standing in the doorway of the smithy just beyond Micken's swing, catching the little bright specks he knocked free with his hammer before they winked out useless and cold on the ground. When she was old enough to be scolded properly for courting danger, Catelyn scolded her with impeccable fairness, and the girl stood with her slim shoulders drawn back and endured it, and later would go and squat near the pipes that hid in a back passage with her face full of the pleasant ache that comes from warmth meeting winter's ache. Old Nen held her in a net of words. The old woman smelled of grapes gone long to raisins and of the dust of woven wool. In winter, when the hall was a constant darkness broken only by torches, Nan's stories were a separate light in the castle, bluish as a crack under a door. Nera would creep into her lap when she could escape the other girls' chatter and their circle games, and Nan would stroke the strange pale hair like something found among river rocks. Nan never once said the word dragon, but she knew 1,000 other things. Wolves, the old kings with their cold iron crowns, children who walked in nows with no footprints, a white who had lost its shadow and wanted a new one so badly it would slip into any warm bed it found. Nera's eyes would grow wide. Then later, when she lay sleepless and watched the torchlight barely moving on the ceiling beams, she would remember the shape of the stories and the shape of another name under her name. It had been given to her once, the other name. She did not remember the night, but there came a morning when Lord Eddard took her by the hand and walked with her into the Godswood. She was 7 winters then, and the Godswood was not a place she had been allowed to roam alone. It was both near and far, the way things are that live within a wall and are not domesticated by it. The air there was thick with the breath of green things, even in winter, the steam of the pools softening the edges where snow met water, and everywhere there was the watching of the white tree with its bleeding face. He led her to the water's edge and crouched to tie a bootlace that had worked itself free. He did not look at her while he spoke, which made the words easier to bear. "There is a truth I will put into your pocket," he said. "You will not take it out. You will only touch it now and then to know it is there. That is how one carries something safely. Do you understand?" "I think I do," she said, because she wanted to. "When a child is found at a door," he said, "and there is a storm behind her, and the child cannot say her own name properly because she is too small to do it, a man may give her a name to carry in under his roof. This is a good and right thing. Keeps the child from the snow. But the name she brings under the door with her is not destroyed. It lives also. You have a name you carry into the cold within you, and a name that keeps you warm here." She had known, in the way children know the important thing and leave it alone because it seems right to do so. Now the simple words gave permission to think it. "What is the other one?" she asked, her voice a little thread of steam. He told her. "Daenerys." He said it quietly. The leaves of the heart tree made a small noise in the light wind. She tried the shape of it under her breath, and it felt far and heavy and bright all at once. A coin she wasn't strong enough to lift yet, so she tucked it back into the pocket he had made with words and said, "I will hold it." "I ask you not to show it," he replied. "There are people in the wide world who would buy it with blood. You will not go near markets. I have brought you here to say this not to make you afraid, but because fear takes up less space when it is out where both of us can see it and put it back where it belongs. Do not say it to anyone but me and Maester Luwin. Not to Arya when she swears she keeps secrets better than Jon. Not to Sansa when she holds your hand and whispers promises. Not to anyone." She nodded. The weirwood's carved face regarded them without pity, as it regarded everything. Nera felt a little ache in her chest. "Why have you told me now?" she asked. "You are old enough to help me carry it," he said. "When you were smaller, I carried it for you. It is heavy for one man and one truth. 2 is better. 3 is better still. Luwin carries the part an old man can carry, and you will carry a child's share and I my own." She looked out across the pool where steam rose, and the shimmer made the reflected branches blur. "I will be careful," she said. He touched her hair then, so lightly she could have believed it had been a leaf falling. "You are careful," he said. "That is a comfort to me." After that day, the godswood at Winterfell belonged to Nera in a small way that a place belongs to one who carries an oath tied to it. She went there more often, always when she knew she could go without notice, and she sat with her knees drawn up on a particular bit of stone where the warmth came through in a steady pulse that was almost breath, and she watched the tree and watched the reflections and let her breath become part of the forest's breath until she did not know which was which. She did not believe that the face on the trunk watched her in a human way, but sometimes when she had a question that could not be asked, and asked it anyway in the manner of children, the wind answered in a way that made it easier to leave the question alone. She thought often of her other name. Saying it silently was like touching a blade kept wrapped in cloth. She knew it could cut her if she were careless, but she also found a strange relief in knowing it had weight and edge and would not bend in her hand. Winter passed into a narrow spring. The snow receded almost shyly, leaving behind little rags of itself in corners of the yard, as if ashamed to have lingered so long. Water ran off roofs like 1,000 veils being shaken at once to dry, and everywhere came the clammy smell the earth gives off when it remembers it is dirt and not white clothing. The boys in the yard fought with renewed vigor, feet skating in the mud, and in the women's room Sansa and Jane Poole argued softly about the proper color of a bodice edge for a feast that would not be held for months yet. Arya dragged Nera with her to the far fences where a sow had littered, and they peered in at the red, bewildered piglets and the sow's kind, enormous surrender to their daily hunger. Jon was her friend, though neither of them had ever said the word and would have been embarrassed to hear it. He showed her how to stand so her weight would not betray her in snow. He showed her how to wrap her fingers to bear them for the instant needed to pull a bowstring and not lose the feeling in them. He did not talk about himself much, which Nera thought a good rule and tried to imitate, but sometimes they traded facts in the quiet way of people who have to pass one another on the same stair every day. She hated the taste of onions. He could not abide the sound of knives being sharpened on whetstone. She sometimes woke with a heat on her cheeks as if she had been running though she had not moved. He liked to stand in the stable among the horses because their steady breath made his lungs feel less lonely. When Lord Eddard called for the boys to the yard, Nera would sometimes go with Arya and stay apart, sitting on a bit of wall warmed by the sun to watch Robb move like he belonged to the ground and Jon move like he belonged to his blade. Theon Greyjoy came to them when Nera was 8, a lanky boy with a grin that looked like it might fly off and strike someone if he didn't keep hold of it. He was a prince and a hostage, and he had the air of someone who has been taught his life is both valuable and easily ended. He tried various sorts of kindnesses on her and abandoned them as he found they did not bring what he wanted. He used her eyes as a mirror to check his own face. She learned quickly to step sideways from his jokes with a little smile that did not attach itself to anything he said. Catelyn was precisely the woman she had promised Eddard she would be. She gave Nera winter cloaks lined in fur when she outgrew old ones, and she corrected her table manners without cruelty. And once when Nera broke a cup, a small thing, a thin thing, slipped from her fingers because it was slick with steam. Catelyn said firmly it was nothing and it was not the end of anything and bought a new cup for the table with a blue edge that Nera fancied. But Catelyn kept a distance, measured and fair. It was not cold like a frost. It was the even space people give one another in halls so that they don't jostle. Nera learned its edges and kept within them. Maester Luwin instructed them all in his tower, and Nera learned to read the crabbed letters that wound through the histories like small black rivers. Luwin did not pretend Valyria was not a place that had been. He showed her, as he showed all his charges, maps with the dragon-shaped peninsula labeled in ink faded to a ghost of its original black, and he used the same tone for Valyria as for the Trident and the Blackwater and the Rills. When he spoke of the Doom, his voice took on a mild sorrow the way men's voices do when they speak of blights that ruined good crops and were nobody's fault. Nera listened greedily. She could not help it. The words fed the hunger she could not point to. History is a poor mother and a poorer nurse, Luwin said once when she lingered after the others had gone to ask a question about a crude drawing of a dragonbone bow. He held up the thin strip of something not quite wood and not quite bone and flicked it idly with a finger. She keeps so many in her arms that none can be truly comforted. But we go to her, because we must know who else has eaten from the same bowl as we do. Have you seen one? Nera asked, watching his hands. A dragon bone. This is one, he said, mildly amused. I mean, yes. He set the strip down. When I wore a different chain in a different tower, a trader brought a costume for a fair, and among its foolish props was an arrowhead of the old stuff. Men argued over it as if the arguing could fill their bellies. It was no better than any arrowhead. It was black. It was heavy. You could cut yourself on it as on any sharp thing. Do not feed yourself on the idea of things, Nera. It is a starvation diet. Yes, Maester, she said. She tucked the admonition away with her other carefulness. But that night she dreamed of a corridor in stone. Walls on either side leaked warmth into the narrow space. At the far end there was a red door. She reached for the handle, knowing she could not open it. The handle was warm as a body. She woke with her hand closed in the covers and the taste of iron in her mouth. There were moments when the two names inside her rubbed against each other and struck sparks. When Arya, fierce and dirty Need, called her to come see the stray cat with half an ear at the granary and Nera laughed and ran. The sparks seemed to be the friendly kind that fly up from a hearth and die prettily. When Sansa took her by the wrist with gentle fingers and said, "You should use a silk thread for this bit. You will find it does not knot as the wool does." And the even voice soothed something restless in her. The sparks were where they should be. But when Theon, in an idle moment, looked at her and said to no one in particular, "Better be careful with that hair, far girl. I've heard sometimes kings remember what's theirs by what falls out of the comb." And Maester Luwin cut him short with a glance. Nera felt the other kind of spark, the kind that finds tinder in old wood. In the 9th winter of her life, something changed in the north that had nothing to do with her and yet moved through the air of Winterfell the way rumors blow under doors. Hunters came south with stories that felt like old stories pulled out and made new because the speaker's own mouth had made them. A ranger's brother in Barrowton said the woods were different, that the afternoons never fully thawed where his man had always known them to soften, that the trees seemed to listen when none had given permission. There were skins hung on fences where no one would say what creature had filled them. Eddard listened like a man listens to changes in wind to know how long the roof will last. He walked more often in the yard with that contained energy of a man who might have to move in a way he does not want. When he spoke with Rob and John after the day's practice, they listened harder. Nera watched them without wholly understanding what had gathered. It was a morning when the frost had embroidered all the edges of things in the yard ladder rungs. A dropped bucket's lip, the rafters of the stable, with a beauty as crisp as pain that the raven came down to the rookery with a message. Nera did not hear the message. She watched the way Maester Luwin's mouth tightened and the way Eddard went still and then moved without fuss and yet differently, as if all motion had suddenly to be weighed for the noise it would make and the attention it would draw. That night Catelyn prayed longer, and Nera, slipping by the open crack of the door, heard the little rhythm of the 7 names fall in their soft southern order and was caught by the sweet, unfamiliar lilt of them like a song in a language she knew once and had forgotten. Days later Eddard called Nera to the Godswood again, and she knew before he spoke that the little coin in her pocket would burn hotter. "The king is coming north," he said. He did not say why. She did not ask. She had never seen a king except in drawings and in old Nan's telling, where they were sometimes noble and sometimes fools and sometimes simply men who sat long enough on a chair to be called by a different word. She felt fear, but not as a shriek or a stab. It was the sense of a large shadow falling over a hillside and the air cooling. She thought of her other name. She touched it without taking it out. "Where will I be?" she asked. He looked toward the tree. "Winterfell is a large place with many turns," he said. "He will come for me. He will come to see my children. He will not meet every child under my roof. There are roads in this castle that courtiers do not walk. We will put you there. You will spend afternoons with the women in the spinning room and mornings at the rookery if Luwin agrees, and the Godswood if you are quiet and careful. The king will be here to talk of king's matters. That will take all his eyes. When he hunts, he looks only at the ground before his horse. When he eats, he looks only at what is on his plate. When he sleeps, he will dream the dreams men dream in beds too soft." "What does he look like?" she asked, because she wanted to put something ordinary over the fear like a cloak thrown over a basket. "He is large," Eddard said. "He laughs when he drinks. He thinks his laughter makes the walls warmer. Sometimes it does. He is a force, not a careful man. That is not always a criticism." "Will he know me?" she asked, and heard the smallness in her voice. "He will not," he said. "His eyes look far ahead or very near, not at the middle. We live in the middle. That is our safety and our sorrow." A thrush sent a little string of notes into the cool air, absurdly sweet. Nera knelt and dipped her fingertips into the nearest pool, and then pressed them to her eyelids and felt a blessing she would not have named as such. The surface had quivered at her touch and then become itself again, as it always did. She did not see the king when he came. She saw the servants scramble, and she saw Lady Catelyn kneel and rise in such a way that the layers of her skirts moved like the surface of a placid river, and she saw the small stiff dance courtesy forces from bodies. She heard the heavy voice as it rolled through the corridors like a barrel let go on a slant. She smelled sauces she smelled only on feast days and heard songs only sung for men who traveled with their own singers. There was a curious electricity to it, as if old wool had been rubbed briskly against wood and made its own spark. For 3 days all of Winterfell was bright and full of talk, and then it began to settle like flour dusting down after the kneaders have left the table. In those 3 days Nera learned the sideways routes through her home that she had not yet needed. A narrow stair behind the kitchen that led to a landing where you could sit and hear half of what was said in the hall by people who spoke a little louder than they thought. A passage along the north wall that was nothing but pipes at her shoulder and a constant damp that kissed hair and clothes and made the skin prick and the breath so easy it felt like someone else's. A shadowed edge of the Godswood where the heat pooled in a way that felt almost like a living body you could put your cold feet against and not be told to stop. On the second day, when the king returned from the hunt with laughter around him like dogs, Nera was in the rookery with Maester Luwin. She was let be there because she had quiet hands and because the birds liked her. Ravens are not easily fooled by the charms people use with dogs and children. They are moody, jealous, greedy, and very clever, and they rarely consent to like anyone. They did not like Nera, but they tolerated her. She knew which ones would bite when she reached their perch and held the cup of fresh water, and which would turn one glossy black eye toward her and hop aside to give her the correct space. The rookery window gave onto the yard in a severe way, without poetry or excess. You could see what was there and no more. She watched the king dismount and slap the sweaty neck of his horse. He had a beard made bolder by gray. He smiled with his mouth and with his eyes, and then not with his eyes, and then with one eye. His hair was like a bear's pelt gone to seed. She watched Lord Eddard stand beside him and be the exact amount of warm a friend is required to be and the exact amount of cool a lord is required to be. And she saw the king clap her lord on the back with a fondness that would have knocked a less steady man forward. Nera did not look away. She let the image settle into her like a lesson. "What do you think?" Luwin asked, following her gaze. He liked to know how minds fitted themselves to the world, and he liked to adjust his care to those edges. "I think," she said after considering, "that if he was a dog he would bowl over anyone smaller than he was, and then lick their face until they forgave him." Luwin made a soft sound that could have been a chuckle. "A fair beginning at politics," he allowed, and handed her a small, very sharp knife to pare some fungus from a beam. She liked the discipline of it. Strip only what fed on the wood. Leave the beam whole. Do not peel the living thing back beyond what would allow it to grow again. She had learned to stop her hand at the exact moment. It pleased her to be Metho. Daikel when so many feelings felt like a river with too few stones to step on. Below in the yard, the shadows of the king's men swam like fish. On the fourth day of the king's stay, as afternoon made pools of light in the hall and sent dust motes adrift through them like little defeated stars, a boy came panting up the back stair where Nera sat with Arya. He ignored both of them the way boys on errands ignore any girl who is not the person they're looking for. "Ghosts in the woods," he said to the space above their heads. "Or else a stag bigger than a cart. The dogs are mad with it, they say." Arya's eyes went wide and eager. "We're going," she said, already halfway up and moving. Nera followed, because she had learned it was better to follow Arya when the itch in Arya's legs wanted movement than to be left behind to worry what the movement would bring to her bent. They found Jon in the yard already readying himself, his cloak hastily thrown around his shoulders and a bow in hand. Robb was at his side, Theon too laughing. No one told the girls to go back. There was no spare breath for pushing small folk into proper places. The men of the household clogged the gate in an organized hurry and then were gone, and Nera and Arya, left as the wake of their leaving, cut across to the north side where they could climb the low wall and see the line of men lacing into the trees. "Don't climb," Nera said, and put a hand to Arya's arm, and they went around the right way because her hand had the weight of a reason in Arya's mind equal to the weight of Robb's command in the yard when he barked one. They went only to the edge of the Godswood, only to where you could see the men become trees and trees become men and then only trees. "They'll bring it back," Arya said, bouncing. "If it's the stag it'll be too heavy to carry at once and they'll have to make a sled. If it's ghosts they won't bring it back at all." "What do you think it is?" Nera asked. "I think," Arya said and stopped. The look on her face changed. She had good ears and the woods let her hear when they would not be bothered to let others. "What?" Nera whispered. "Something?" Arya said, eyes wide suddenly, not with eagerness but with something kin to fear. "It's the dogs." They didn't have to decide whether to follow. The decision arrived in a rush. Jon and the rest came back angled toward the hall with their speed carefully managed to not be a run, which made it look more frightening. Two of the men were carrying something slung on a spear between them. The smell came first, rank and wild and metallic the way the air near the smithy smelled just as Mikken struck. The thing on the spear was fur and teeth and long legs. Nera felt her mouth go dry. "They found her in the shallows," Theon said to someone, and someone passed it to someone else, as happens when a story needs to spread its body quickly among many hearers. "Frozen with her belly ripped. The pups near her. Dire wolf," Robb said, and the word sounded like a story pulled sharply and made to stand still in daylight. "A wood. I thought they did not come so close." "They do what they please," one of the older men said. "The woods tell them things before they tell us. See for yourself." They laid the she-wolf out on a stretch of blood-slick leather near the smithy. Children know when they're allowed to come close to a dead thing. half by the faces of their elders and half by the temperature of the air. They knew it would be permitted here. Arya's hand found Nera's and squeezed hard enough to hurt, and Nera held her ground. The she-wolf's eyes were clouded, but would have been yellow. Her muzzle was grizzled and proud even in death. The cut that had spilled her and ended her was ugly and clean at the same time. No gnawing, no mess, only the brutal order of a single blow with a sharp thing. Nera did not look at the wound long. She looked at the feet and the great, curved claws and the long legs and the silence that seemed to stand around the animal the way silence sometimes stands around a man who has died holding a dignity that cannot be taken from him after death. Then she looked at what lay beyond. Pups. 5 of them at first glance, and then a 6th, and then a faint sound which she had not known she had been listening for until it came again. Another, a small, thin mew like a blade drawn along a stone too gently to bite. Nera moved before she knew she would, and Robb, to his credit, did not grab at her to hold her back. She worked carefully along the tangle of grasses and ice where the mother had come to die and put her hand into a ball of burrs and half-melted snow and felt something tremble. She drew it out in both hands the way a woman draws a pie from the oven, aware of heat and fragility and the simplicity of things being made ready for the mouth. 7. The pup was almost too small to be what it was. A ridiculous, shivering thing with a coat so pale it might have been made from the snow it had hidden in. Its eyes were sealed, its breathing a hurried rattle. Nera crouched on her heels and bent her head and was aware of many eyes at the same moment aware of none at all. 7, she said. She did not look up when she said it. There is power in a number when it arrives unexpected and correct. Jon came near to her shoulder then, and she felt the heat of him, too. He reached to steady a bit of ice that would have slid from the fur onto the ground. He had a way of helping that did not take something from the person he helped. Nera was grateful for it then. Theon whistled low and said something about the gods having a sense of humor. It is not mercy to take any of them who will not live, one of the men said, as if anyone needed the reminder. Stark or no, better the times be honest. True, Eddard said, and his voice made all other voices softer as it did. He had come up from the yard at some point in the quiet. But we have a full larder and hands enough to fay. Edition Winterfell can afford a mercy that the woods cannot. If they live, they will belong here. If they die, we will bury them properly and not with poor guesses. My children. He looked at Robb, at Sansa and Arya who had found their own way to the edge of the circle, at Bran clattering up with his innocence like a bell banging at his side. And those I treat as such, if you take one, it is yours for work and for care and not for play. I have no objection to a house with wolves in it if the wolves are taught not to make a home of the table. It was a moment like a hinge. Nera felt the weight of choice and the way sometimes a choice arrives and is no choice at all, because the world has been turning toward it for so long that the turning itself is the decision. She looked down at the thing in her hands and saw not only a pup but also a mirror and a promise. Winterfell had taken a creature from the cold that should have died and made space for it near the hearth. Perhaps the old gods smiled to see patterns hold. They were meant for us, Robb said, half wonder, half just the assertion of a boy who knows what he wants and finds that the world agrees. I will take this one, Nera said, and no one corrected her. Though Sansa raised an eyebrow and then let it down, and Catelyn's mouth, where she stood in the shadow of the pillars, made a line and then unsmoothed itself. Jon met Nera's eyes and something passed between them that had nothing to do with wolves. He reached beneath and offered the runt the edge of his cloak so the cold ground would not bite so quick. They brought the pups in and smelled fish oil and milk for a week in the halls, and the particular sharp smell pups have in their first days that is neither wholly pleasant nor unpleasant but is full of promise. Nera's little pale creature grew hungry and then sleepy and then hungry again, and when it opened its eyes they were not like hers but the ordinary dark of a night with no moon. It pleased and saddened her to see this. She named it quietly when she was alone. Ash, she said, trying the sound. It was pale as a deposit of ash on a hearthstone where the fire had burned very hot and quick and left the outline of itself behind. Ash blinked and sneezed and fell asleep with its head on her foot. The king left in his time as kings leave, impatiently and with ceremony that seemed at once too much and not enough. The yard emptied of banners and full laughter. The September wind wore a new edge. Eddard stood on the wall and watched the dust of the party settle out along the road and did not say what he was thinking. Nera noted only that his mouth was set in the way it was set when numbers did not add up on the steward's lists. Life turned in again. The snow came in flurries and lingered. The wolves grew. Ash learned Nera's voice before it knew its own name and learned where it could sleep near the heat without being in the way. Catelyn watched the beast with a wary resignation that made Nera careful to keep Ash in her own orbit only. There were scratches and bites, few and instructive. Jon's white-eyed wolf haunted the yard soundless as the drift of a winter cloud. It was like and unlike them all. Nera was glad of that on his behalf, because she understood how being like and unlike both could be a burden and a right. The day the letter came that was not from any man at court or friend in the south, but from a careful hand in Bravos asking after a girl with hair like winter, Nera did not know it had arrived. She only registered the way Luwin closed his fingers too tightly around a piece of bread at the noon meal and seemed to be counting in his head. That evening Eddard went down to the crypts alone without telling anyone and came up alone later with his face as impassive as the stone faces of the kings there. Nera saw Ash prick his ears when Eddard passed by her in the passage, an instinctive bend toward the gravity of the man. Winter taught you to make thoughts into neat bundles and put them in the chest where the furs were kept. You could take them out when there were hours to sit by the fire and rub them between the fingers. The world did not provide many of those hours when the roads were good and the ravens flew straight. Nera grew into her carefulness. She learned to make her hands small for tasks that needed smallness and large for tasks that needed boldness. She became very good at lighting fires from what most would call poor tinder, and at seeing where the warmth would gather in any given room, and at placing herself in those spots with the practiced ease of someone who knows how to take her comfort without making a ceremony of it. When she dreamed of the red door now, it did not always stay closed. Sometimes it opened to show a courtyard full of lemon trees. She had never seen a lemon tree. She had seen lemons in baskets brought by traders and marveled at them like eggs from a bird too large to have eggs. How had they been kept from bruising? And who had thought to protect them with straw in that careful way? In her dream, their smell was bitter and fresh as new snow and as far from Winterfell as the bottom of the sea. She stood in the doorway and did not go through. Ash grew. Ash learned the names of every stair and every passage where the steam kissed stone. The wolf was hers in a way that nothing else had been hers, that safe, deep sense of mutual ownership with something that is not quite human and yet knows your heart better than it should. When Nera's face went still and cool in sudden tension with Arya or with Sansa, which happened rarely. Sansa was a patient tutor in small kindnesses, and Arya used her temper like a flint to strike her days into being. Ash would put his chin on her knee and add his warm breath to hers as if to remind her that the sum of the two was enough to keep them both. When she lay awake at night and counted the drips in the corner where a pipe had a slow leak that no one could be bothered to defy. In winter, Ash would move this way and that until his flank pressed the back of her calves. She learned to not kick when she dreamed she was running because then he would yelp and wake the other girls, and the lady in the nurse's room would come in and scold everyone in an undifferentiated wash of irritation. It was an ordinary night with bread and stew, with Theon telling a story about an island in the Iron Isles where the stones sang in wind and Rob laughing and saying stones have no throats and Theon arguing that throats are not required for song. That is what the wind is for. When a small thing happened that would be, later, one of those beads on the string you mark for bright significance. A young man, damp from the road and polite in the way of one who knows his messages might be unwelcome but must be delivered, came into the hall and asked for Lady Catelyn. He had the river look about him, the deliberate calm of someone who had learned his work among slow brown waters. Nera barely noticed at the time. She noticed later the way you notice that the water in a kettle began to whisper before it boiled. That night Catelyn did not sleep. That morning Eddard looked at his bread and did not eat it. Nera, who occupied the middle of things and tried not to look as if she did, marked these details the way the ravens in the rookery marked the weather. The in-between places of Winterfell told their own news if you listened. The day the change was declared was not dramatic. "I will go south," Eddard said, so simply that none of the complicated sorrow and assessment inside the sentence seemed to have any place to sit. The hall took breath together. It did not matter what was said next. It would be details added to a shape that had already formed. That night, in the Godswood, where a dusting of new snow made little halos around the edges of stones, and the pools wore their steam as usual like a shawl. Nera sat and tried to think of the world beyond the walls. She could imagine the details. She could remember a lemon's rind and piece what it might look like hanging on a real tree. She could imagine a road that went straight for more than a mile. She could see in her mind a sky with no ravens in it for hours at a time. But it was harder to imagine the shape of the days without him. Winterfell had its own mind, and Lord Eddard was part of it. When he walked the battlements, the stones leaned into his weight. When he passed a fire, it made a sound like a smaller, polite crackle. He was not only the man with the ring and the hall and the voice other voices accommodate. He was, in a manner Nera had learned from living near him and no clearer word to put to it, the way the place kept time. Ash lay with his chin on her foot. She placed her hand on the wolf's head and let her fingers find the old scar on the ear that a littermate's teeth had left. The heart tree did not speak. The water made its sounds. The gods of the north were not the kind to tell children they would be safe or that every arrangement could be maintained if she only folded her wishes small enough. She had thought sometimes that the fire in her and the cold around her were enemies. She had learned, under these stones, that they were neighbors, as Winterfell prepared to cut itself in two. Half to be sent down the king's road as a father and a lord and a promise, and half to remain as a house that would be both emptier and larger. Nera thought not of great things like dragons or songs, but of small proprieties. The way the bread from the second oven comes with a crispness the first cannot achieve. The sound the ravens make between full night and dawn that is not like their cawing at any other hour. The warmth of the pipes in the passage. Adjacent to the laundry, the one that goes nowhere anyone official goes, where she could tuck herself with a cloak and feel her bones be uniformly warm. The exact measure of the stone step near the armory that would trip you if you did not remember to lift your toe a fraction more. The world was made of things like that, at least as much as it was made of kings and their moods. She stood and brushed the snow off the back of her skirt with the careful motion of someone putting a thought back on a shelf. Ash rose obediently, yawned, and shook his coat. At the edge of the godswood, where the threshold between warm damp and gentlemanly cold lay, Nera paused and looked back at the red eyes in the white face. It did not seem to watch her. It watched everything. In the corridor outside, Arya sprang out at her with a wooden sword and an earnest "Ha!" that would have made a less charitable person laugh. Nera parried with her forearm earnestly and well, and Arya accepted it as a proper counter and fell into step. They walked up the hall together in the ordinary way of two girls in a place where there was much to be done, and most of it would get done whether or not they worried about it in advance. Ash followed, silent as the snow, the shape of the old world and what it allowed slipping easily into the corridors of the new.